Okay,
This meeting is being recorded.
there we go. Good evening, everybody. Deborah Howe. Before we get started, just a real brief introduction. You may already know John D'Annunzio. He's with Locac. He's joining us tonight. He's been incredibly helpful to me, and he's going to assist us in going forward. But I want to start out by telling those of you who are on this committee who have been doing this work for a long time now, you have my deepest respect because this stuff is dense. It is hard. And I read this stuff and then I have to go back and read it again because it's so multi-layered. And so kudos to you guys for hanging in there for all these years and really trying to make things happen. And so I have the utmost respect, and I really appreciate you bringing your expertise to the table so that we can move some things forward for our community. So that's what I wanted to say. And then I'd like to do a quick roll call of committee members. So Trish Bartel.
Present.
Jeff Bartel.
Here.
Meg Siphon. Just wave.
Here. I was trying to hit my unmute.
Josh.
Here.
Josh, say your last name for me so I can.
Locac.
Say it again.
Locac.
Locac. Oh, it sounds way better the way you say it than what I was trying to say. Locac. Okay. Jeff Krebs, can you unmute or wave or something and let us know?
Well,
Obviously,
I'm not really on the committee. I'm just got an active interest in this.
Okay, and that's true of Dave and Bev. So the only
Yeah.
person not here is Lynette. She is a member of the committee. Okay. Announcements. So one thing I want everybody to know is that next Thursday is our general Locac meeting. We meet at 7 o'clock on Thursday, and Josh Roberts, who is the division manager for transportation for SLO County, will be there, and he will be discussing the El Moro sidewalk project for Baywood Elementary. Important meeting. Please attend if you can, and see what he has to say. There will be members of the Baywood Elementary PTA there. I've been in touch with them and they're very interested to understand this project. So I expect public comment from them. And then I think somebody from, John, are you planning on coming next week? Okay, so then somebody from SLOCOG is coming as well. Okay, more announcements. And this is what John and I discussed today. SLOCOG is sunsetting their Safe Routes to School program. That is going to be no more. And they're going to be starting a new program in April. John, you can unmute yourself and correct me if I give any information that's not quite right. My understanding is that there's a new program coming online. It's called Community Betterment. Is that right? And it will be a $7 million county program. There will be probably in June a call for projects. Okay, guys, this is where we need to gear up. We're gonna prioritize some projects here, and we're gonna get in line for some of this money. So we need to get organized, and we need to understand what are our priorities and how do we best go about doing this grant writing. And John has given me a lot of information, and probably there's a lot more for me to understand about how important it is for community involvement. that this goes a long way when you're doing a grant application where you show that the community is involved. And John, I'm going to let you speak to a couple of examples that you gave me, like the Girl Scout letter and the elementary kids painting and things like that.
Sure, I'm happy to, Deborah, and thanks for having me again. John D'Annunzio, Locac staff. I'm on the programming and project delivery division of the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. So we're the regional agency. We work with the county, we work with the cities, and our board is comprised of the 5 supervisors and the seven cities, with Caltrans also serving a role in our board. So when we make decisions for investing federal, state, or regional money, it's with those stakeholders in mind that we're making investments. So that can be the highways, the 46, the 101, the 41, the 1, interchanges, and then also community enhancement programs or safe routes to school programs. So like the Baywood Elementary project is one such project that came through our agency, or is coming through our agency. So in my role at the agency, and then with the state, I participate in the state active transportation program. I'm an evaluator for that program. And it's in the 5th or 6th cycle now. If you follow state grant funding cycles, and becoming increasingly more competitive, and the guidelines for that limited state money is increasingly more deliberate and focused. You will have heard, right, about the Bob Jones Trail this last cycle receiving kind of a windfall of $18 million. That's really due in a very large part. It was written by the Friends of the Bob Jones Trail. It was written by a nonprofit and several individuals on a committee working with County Parks Committee over many years to kind of get that project fully funded. So that was kind of in the hopper for 20 years, right? So on that particular project, but sometimes some of the lighter community betterments, community projects, hopefully can take a shorter route. One of the key things is community engagement and demonstrating an interest by the users, by the students, whether it's through volunteer walk to school days, which our rideshare division often can help fund pop-up demonstrations or walk to school days, and different events, like with donuts and coffee in the morning, or pancake breakfasts and stuff like that. When there was more movement of people, obviously. So there's a lot you can do, but you'll work through all the technical, the front end of an application, and then kind of get to the back end where you look at the community engagement piece. And it's true that letters like I mentioned to Deborah earlier, Santa Margarita, Girl Scout in Santa Margarita. In fact, it was Josh Roberts who passed me the letter. So a fellow who will be representing the county next week at your committee, showed me a letter from a Girl Scout trying to safely cross the railroad tracks in Santa Margarita. So that letter alone wouldn't quite win a Caltrans grant, but it gets staff talking to each other and talking about, well, hey, what can we do? What programs might fit that railroad crossing? What programs might fit the Los Osos Valley Trail community pathway, or enhancements around Baywood or elsewhere in the community? So they make a difference. Demonstrations, pop-up projects like with chalk and colored, they used to do kind of colored car tires, right? I think they tried that in San Luis Obispo maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and half the people liked it, half didn't. But in fact, Josh Roberts was talking to me the other day about trying to do a demonstration roundabout up in Templeton. So I know that the county is not opposed, Public Works is not opposed to some sort of demonstration project. And it's that type of incremental movement or critical mass movement that that is fuel to the technical applications, and to kind of keep them moving forward. So I'll stop there for now. Yeah.
Well, so this is all about raising visibility, and the timing is perfect because Locac has decided to do a reach out event, and it's Trish, is it Saturday the May 31st or Sunday April 1st? Oh, you're muted. You have to oh, there.
Yeah, I know. I have to go ahead and.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's either Saturday or Sunday, the end of May.
It's on
April,
Sunday,
end of April.
It's May 1st.
May 1st, Sunday, May 1st. Locac is renting the Red Barn in Los Osos. We've invited all groups to come and participate, so that the community can walk through and get information, whether you want to learn about South Bay Women's Network, do you want to learn about the Los Osos CSD, the Basin Management Committee is going to be there. You can learn more about our water aquifer. They're going to do presentations. We can do a whole thing around active transportation. John described a thing called a bike rodeo to me, where you take the parking lot and you set up obstacles, and bikes do, I don't know what they do, but anyway, it sounds like fun. And so this is all about raising the visibility. We get this recorded, we get pictures, and then these are the kinds of things that we can add to a grant application with our request. So all of these things are going to kind of come together, I think, in a beautiful way if we're ready. And that's what our committee is all about, getting ready and making the most of our opportunities here. So I want to stay on track because I know Jeff wants to do his presentation and I don't want to meander. The new funding is called Community Betterment. It can go to a lot of different projects. I'm thinking a library, Meg. It doesn't have to be a school. We can ask for anything. There's also some money that John described to me, the urban highway account. That's something we can talk about under funding, but this was news to me that every year we get $60,000 for Los Osos. It goes to Public Works and it's earmarked for Los Osos, and it helps fund some infrastructure kind of thing. He described the Napomo traffic light was one of those things that was funded by that money. And that there's also bike and pedestrian counting that could really help us in terms of finding out, well, how many people are walking on that El Moro path, and showing how important that is. So these are all things that we're going to try to get lined up for our community. And big thanks to John for, sort of leading me through that and helping me understand that. And if there's anything else you'd like to add, John, please go right ahead, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't, I just the persistence. I mean, I think too, I mean, I see Meg Siphons on the line, and I happen to have a copy of our sort of regional transportation plan. This is Locac's transportation plan. And, if if you go to page 22 of the plan, there's a big old picture of Meg right there looking good, and basically telling her story, or telling the story of about Los Osos and the pathway, and sort of the hero's journey that that she and others in the community sort of have undertaken with County Public Works. And of course, I did that because this is a PDF that we can grab. It's a single page by design to rip out and attach right in the back of a grant application. So that, that's why we did it. And it's collecting collateral like that. It can be as easy as a story. It can be an op-ed in the Bay News, or just an open letter to the editor, or something like that. Or hey, this is what this new committee is now doing, and some of the goals and how we're trying to get there. And if that gets published, proof of publication is another really useful tool for collateral, to demonstrate incremental progress and interaction with the community. So there's a lot to talk on that, and I'm just excited to see this group and forming, and look forward to helping where we can as you progress and grow with your priorities.
Great. Jim, you have a question?
Hi, I have a question for John. John, out of the 7 million that you said was potentially available countywide, what's a realistic amount for Los Osos to reach for?
Yeah, that's a reasonable question, and I'm glad you brought that up, because so the applicant will be Public Works. So public works, or I guess parks, would make the submission to us, and so the influence that would be needed would be to persuade Public Works that this project rises to, or a project or a series of projects rises to the top from a Public Works point of view, as compared to other projects that they might have going on in Templeton, Shandon, San Miguel, Oceano, other unincorporated communities. Cambria, Burton Drive is another good project that might also be pursued by the county. So that's a tricky one. I think we might have a cap on the maximum project amount, might be $1 million. So my sort of sweet spot suggestion would probably be under 500 for it to be reasonable. And if you could get designs done on everything that you wanted to be designed up, or a design build on one location. So, and I mean, everything you want to have designed up, I'm talking about maybe finishing El Morro, 11th Street, and Los Osos Valley Road, because there's that drainage issue and there's property lines and right of way through there. So the designs of that would be really important as a next step. And I know it's not going for gold saying design and build on Los Osos Valley Road, but I think that just getting the designs done and getting the right of way worked out, that's the golden ticket, because once that's done, it's like, and maybe even not, yeah, I mean, then it's shelf ready, and then you can find staff or agencies to compete for construction money. That's just my opinion, and how I think what one suggestion or one way to do it. But check in with Public Works and what they think, and also then decide as a group what you think too.
Thank you. That was excellent.
That makes a lot of sense, John. And having something shelf ready is sometimes the difference between getting your project funded and not, and missing the boat on some funding that's coming down the road. And I have no evidence, John knows better than I, but I suspect more funding is coming from the state, more funding is coming maybe even from the federal government for active transportation. And when we're shelf ready, we have a chance to grab that funding. If we're not,
Yeah, I will just again just speak on that for a minute. There is the IIJA federal transportation bill, Infrastructure Jobs Act that the Biden administration put through and was signed. So there is a Safe Routes to School, a federal Safe Routes to School program with a pot of money nationally. So I mean, it's again kind of hard to compete nationally. It's hard to compete in the state, hard to compete nationally, but there may be a sweet spot there. You know, applications do get through, and you know, good grant writers know how to sell a project, and that could happen federally. And yeah, and it worked. You know, I think Josh on the call here, you know, will have, and others might have seen what happened in Shandon. So the Shandon Bike Bridge, if you're familiar with that, the Shandon Bike Bridge was designed and sat on the shelf for a few years, and lo and behold, one day a project needed to get built, and we funded it. Slowcog, just boom, 1.2 million, you know, $1.2 million, just get it done, with the help of a supervisor. So a supervisor stepped in and said, "I'd like that, please make it happen." So there's that too.
and what about state representatives like Salud Carbajal and people like that?
Yeah, they help. They help out. They can definitely help. It's they certainly are helping. For instance, with the Morro Bay to Cayucas connector, where there's, you know, it's coastal corridor and kind of big, you know, big projects and stuff. And I'm sure if election time comes around, you would find lots of support from people. So that's one to ask, right?
Yep. All right, great. Any other questions for John before we move on? Okay, it doesn't look like, how about public comment for items that are not on the agenda? Do you have anything? Okay. Oh, okay. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Dave and Bev.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I have a couple things. One that I don't need to wait for the response for right now, but John mentioned something on 11th Street, and I'm not sure what that is. And actually, I'm not sure what the Los Osos Valley Road project is either, unless that's a bike trail all the way to San Luis Obispo. But what I wanted to say was just if, as Jeff Krebs has suggested, you know, we're looking at a 5-year plan or something. It seems to me that within 5 years, whether there's development or not, I don't see why we can't have a continuous sidewalk on the south side of Los Osos Valley Road through the center of town, rather than have people have to go across the street and then go back if they're, you know, walking from Mechanics Bank down to the post office. And the same thing on the other side of the street, to go from Grocery Outlet up to Ralph's. So those two places where there's just gaps in the sidewalk don't make any sense to me at all. But again, I like the idea that Jeff has suggested in what he sent around, at least, about how getting something established so that we'd be able to have plans for 5 years, for the next 5 years, rather than just thinking about what we want to have right now. So anyway, thank you, and we'll keep listening.
Okay, great.
And if John can say what it was he meant specifically on Los Osos Valley Road and on 11th, that'd be great. Thanks.
Oh, I can speak to 11th. 11th was something I put forward to Slocog as a alternative to doing the El Moro section from 9th to 8th. Because 11th Street borders the school directly, where the playground is. There's no sidewalk there, and 11th Street is a very busy street. And so I was suggesting that the money might be better spent to put a sidewalk on 11th Street, especially for kids coming off of the El Moro path, coming over from middle school. But one of the things that John has explained to me is that if we choose not to do this sidewalk project on El Moro from 9th to 8th, if we say no, we lose the money. The money goes back to the pot. We don't get to reapportion it somewhere else. So, so that's the 11th Street, and the Los Osos Valley Road, I think, is the connection. John, you tell me, but we're talking about the connection between Palisade and Pine. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. It's the link between the community center and as far towards the school as you can get, was that project. You know, one other thing I was looking around for before this meeting was the community active transportation project ranking and scoring, or priority list. I had a hard time finding that, even in kind of my records. But I do remember seeing maybe at least 8 years ago or so, a group like this, maybe it was through the Traffic and Circulation Committee, had done a project listing and then ranking and scoring. And I guess I envisage that this group might eventually get to something like that. I would just suggest to do it as simply and succinctly as possible, and maybe just narrow it down to your top 10, you know, as opposed to 30 or 50. But those lists coming from the community are helpful, because it shows thought and then prioritization.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, sir. That's where we're headed.
Yeah, Josh, yeah.
Okay, so we've had this problem before when we tried to put in a bike lane on either 9th or 10th. And the Traffic Circulation Committee had a plan, and I don't know where that is, John. That's part of Locac or one of their subcommittees, but that did interfere with the bikeways plan. So here, once again, is an example of the right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing. So we had basically a buy-in, remarkably, from all the vendors and merchants on 10th or 9th. But it was the traffic circulation plan that held us up on putting that class 2 bike lane in.
All right. Well, this is honestly, this is probably where I'm best suited. My skills are best suited is getting the right hand and the left hand talking. There are so many of you on this committee that know more than I do. Josh, Jeff, you know, Dave and Bev and Meg, you've been around, you have all that background material. I'm here to facilitate. So yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. But Dave, I see your hand is up. Is that from before, or do you have another comment?
Yeah, I didn't lower it, but I know 3 years ago, we went through a long list of priority things and at Traffic and Circulation. And then I don't know if that's what Josh was talking about or not, but we have records of those lists that we worked on for 6 months or more at Traffic and Circulation. But Jeff Krebs has those too, and maybe he's got something to add about that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know Jeff's going to do a presentation. That might be something he's going to discuss. So, but we're going to track down this list and then we're going to refine it and bring it up to date, if you will. Okay, so
If I
Josh?
may, yeah, if I may,
of course.
what I would do is try to combine these two, have this committee combine both the BAC's plan. And you can look that up very easily. It's since we are a Brown Act committee, it's part of public record. Look up the BAC's bikeways plan for the community of Los Osos, and then combine that and overlay it with the traffic circulation plan by the Locac subcommittee. And then you guys decide what you want in those two items. See if there's any conflicts. Maybe there aren't.
Okay.
Yeah. But I would recommend combining the two and overlapping them and reviewing them.
Okay, good suggestion. Any other comments right now, or can we move on? All right. So the first item on the agenda is the Baywood Elementary School El Moro project 9th to 8th. I've already told you that we either do it or we lose it. And I believe you all know that the way this project is designed, it's concrete curbs and gutters, which surprises me because it's always in our community plan that is not to be how pathways are done. So again, this is the right hand, left hand issue where Public Works isn't really quite getting the message. Why they designed it like this, I do not know. But maybe we'll find out. So what I wanted to share with you is, wait, let me go back. I'm going to share screen with you very briefly so we can take a look at this. And I went yesterday. Can you see my screen? Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, great. So yesterday I went to the school. It was about 3:15 or so. And I took some pictures of, this is the intersection at 9th Street and El Moro. And you can see what's interesting here is that the pavement is wider here near the school, and then it gets quite a bit more narrow. This is where the sidewalk would be going in, okay?
Is there a way to make the photo bigger?
Yeah, I think there, how's that? Da-da-da.
It's the same.
I'm just getting a list of like a grouping of photos.
Okay,
Yeah, same here.
all right, well, that's not helpful.
You need,
Oh, wait, maybe I need to do this differently. No. Oh, I hope this is going to work. Maybe I need to open it in a different way. Can you see it now?
Nope.
No.
No.
There might be a thing up above that, because you're in thumbnails probably right now, and if there's a way to, let's see.
Let's see, how can I do this? Because I'm opening it.
go to speaker only, view on your Zoom setting. Try that.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me stop my screen share. Yeah, maybe that's the problem. Maybe I need to change this. Oh, so many things we have to learn. Now let me try and see. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes, success.
Yay!
Yes.
Okie dokie. All right, so here we go. So here's this is right by the school. Here's the school crosswalk. This is where the sidewalk would be going. And you can see that the pavement is wider here and then it gets really, really narrow there. So now I'm going to take you to a different one. And this is, can you see that one? Are you seeing the picture?
That's the same photo.
Photo.
Okay, that's not the one I want then. Oh, this is getting complicated. I'm sorry. I don't want it to be this complicated. I want it to be easy. Open. Now let's see if I can open it up. Can you see it now?
No, how about if you close the first photo completely?
Okay. You know what? If this ends up being too complicated, then I am going to just send these pictures to you.
That sounds fine.
Can you see it now?
No.
Same.
All right, we'll forget it. I don't want to take any time. I'm going to send these pictures to you, or you could just go out there yourself and you could take a look. But I have some pictures and I'm just going to tell you what happened when I was out there. So I'm taking these photographs and a young lady, she was clearly from the middle school because she was older. She had a backpack. She's walking down the street. She's walking down El Moro, exactly like she would be if she was going to be on the sidewalk. I asked her, I said, are you from the middle school? She said, yes. And I said, do you ever worry about walking on the street? And she goes, not really. And so she just kept walking. And right behind her comes this big van. And I have a photograph of this van as she's walking on that part where the new sidewalk would be. It pulls over the double yellow line to go around her, to give her space, because there's really seriously barely any room there. Then there was a child on a bicycle who was, you know, also riding on that street. And I just took some various photos for people to get a sense of what would happen. Because what happens is after the sidewalk would end at 8th Street, so they're going to put the sidewalk between 9th and 8th. When you get to 8th Street, you have nowhere to walk except for a very tiny little patch of sand. And so one of the questions I have for Public Works is, do you take into consideration what happens to the pedestrians when you only do a segment of a project? Where do these kids go? There's no crosswalk at 8th Street. So if they wanted to walk with traffic coming towards them, which is what they should be doing, there's no safe way to cross that street because there's no real crosswalk there. So it's just a concern that I have about, yeah, we want the sidewalk, we want a path all the way down to Baywood, but in the process of doing it, are we creating more of an unsafe situation? Because how long could it take to build a project like all the way down to the bay? I mean, how long has it taken just to do this little patch? Could it take another 10 years? Anyway, those are my questions. And I don't know, maybe you have questions for yourself about this project, but it's going to come up at Locac. And I think we need to give some direction, some idea of some direction of what we should do or what we might do to the council. It's part of our purpose is to be that committee that looks into these things in detail and get a deeper understanding of a situation and then bring it to the council so that they can vote on it. And so I want to sort of get a sense of, what does the committee think about the situation with the sidewalk? Do we want to go forward with this sidewalk? Or do we want to send the money back and say, hey, would you, Public Works think favorably on us for the next go round for something else.
So I have a comment.
Yeah, go for it.
You said that if the money couldn't be allocated to another project, but can the project that they're looking at, can that be modified at all? Or is it just exactly as it is right now and it can't change?
I think that's a good question. And that's a question that Josh Roberts needs to answer, because it would be great if we could have something not concrete curbs and gutters. I would love it if we could do something where we saved a little money, but I don't know that that's even going to save us any money if we changed it to a different surface. I know John specifically got into this with Josh and asked whether or not we could just do decomposed granite. And Josh came back and said, we're not interested in doing anything that's not a permanent. Am I saying this correctly, John? I don't want to mischaracterize.
Yeah, I'm not because this is recorded. I am not sure he used those words exactly. My understanding is they're following a design standard which the civil engineers, Public Works, are comfortable with, that they followed a legal process, and that concrete sidewalk, curbs, and gutter is the preferred solution, and is the solution. I believe that they're at 80% design, if not almost completed with design. So of that $170,000 that's going to this particular project, they have exhausted the staff design budget for it, and so they need the balance for construction. I will say that when we were pitched the project, the goal was to have the link go all the way from the school down to the bay. That the ultimate vision that us as the regional transportation agency are interested in is the whole corridor from the dock to the middle school, including the link there. And so at the time, any improvement that could be made was a first. It's one approach to solving it. The last cost estimate that I saw for the whole link, being from Baywood at 9th to 3rd, right? Of course it's 3rd. Was $1.2 million. So, and that's old. That's old. That's like 3 or 4 year old estimate. So, yep.
But you and I discussed the fact that in your mind, this would be a DG path like what's on Santa Isabella.
Yes. So I thought that was more in the community character, and what's on Santa Isabel is one of the solutions that I thought was kind of preferred by this community. One of the other kind of little cut throughs that was recently paved by Public Works. It's kind of behind the church, St. Elizabeth's. And so if you come out of the community center, you kind of go back on
through the parking lot.
Through the parking lot. It's technically Farrell Avenue. And I want to say it's connecting to 7th Street. So it had always been sand, right? That one little end. And now there's a new link there that Public Works put in. Again, it's kind of more asphalty. It's not concrete, but then this is in front of housing. It's in front of residential. And I know cities of Morro Bay and cities of SLO, if in some places they have ordinances where if the homeowner wants to do development out front, they are the ones who's paying for sidewalk, curb, and gutter. And so, so if that's what's on the books, then that's likely one of the reasons that Public Works is following that. If it was up to the homeowner to fix it, then that's the standard the homeowner would have beholden to. As a guess, it's a guess.
Okay, yeah. So this is one of the things where I appreciate Jeff sending so much information my way, because it's clear to me that it's always been in the Los Osos community plan that these things should be in keeping with the character of our community. And it specifically spells out that concrete curbs and gutters is not to be used. And so again, this is sort of that left hand, right hand, where, it says it in the community plan, but Public Works is coming up with a design that's not consistent with that. So I think we have some pushback there on Public Works about that, but I don't know really where it gets us. We either still do the project or don't do the project.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I can't figure out how to raise my hand on this thing, so I'll just pipe in here.
Okay, fine.
Actually, I discovered this and I contacted John's the one that helped me understand what this project was when I was looking at the community plan draft stuff. My understanding when we were talking at the time was, well, this was a one block thing, that concrete or whatever it was, but the ultimate design wasn't necessarily to the bay, but we were trying to get to the bus stop on 7th. So it was like a one block, then it was going to be another block, and you already have concrete in front of the school. So all we're really doing, it is a different thing from the character of the neighborhood, but around commercial areas and schools and stuff, generally they are putting concrete. So I guess I don't see it as a big problem, other than if we're not going to do the next block, we got a problem, because it is a one block to nowhere if there's no intent to get it to 7th at least.
Yeah, I just want to chime in because I can't help it. And it is very tough to see it not extending this 2 blocks.
Right.
So, I mean, if it had gotten to 7th, you'd have this controlled stop, you'd have the controlled intersection. They'd be there. There would be an ADA drop curve. People could stop at 7th, and then enter into the next environment if they're heading westbound, having gone through a controlled intersection, or make their way to the bus stop. So if anything, you could push them to pony up and to do the second block, and just say that it's just, well, again, we're being recorded, so I am just gonna hit pause, hit mute.
Well, that is a great suggestion, because I am so concerned about how this just abruptly stops there at 8th Street with no protection whatsoever for pedestrians. And I'm sorry that I don't have my pictures available for you to take a look at, but I will send them to you in an email so you can pull them up and take a look yourself, or as I suggested, go take a little drive. Josh, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Okay, well, a couple of things I would like John maybe to comment on is the concept of the complete streets, California Complete Streets Design Manual, and why we at the BAC are promoting that as a concept.
Do you want to describe what that is, complete streets?
Yeah, I'm happy to give that a response, right? So complete streets is when you're looking at all the movements in a given corridor. So from curb to curb, or from storefront to storefront. Many of you use Highway 41, right? So when you leave Los Osos and head right from the zoo to US 101, it's been transformed recently. They had a lot of drainage issues along the 41 on either side, and when Caltrans has resurfaced it, there's a new signing plan that has been put in. So there are bike lanes now, and there's the buffered car parking. So car parking is this is one of the more innovative, and we're seeing it in downtown SLO now with the buffered bike lanes. Madonna Road, you know, with San Luis Ranch going in, transformative, the buffered intersections, buffered. So Complete Streets is looking at kind of all the movements, and if we had if El Moro would have transit on it, but I guess it does, right, with
It
7th
does.
Street.
There's a
11th.
bus stop at 7th.
So it's taking into account, it's the planning that's taking into account all the uses. And as Jeff said, you know, if there was commercial along here, it would take into account commercial. Kind of like when the bike lanes went in front of the Chase Bank, you know, in Los Osos, and people were no longer parking in front to use their ATM. So.
Right. Yeah. So is this a concept that we can use in talking to a Public Works about getting another block so that at least we get down to 7th Street with the sidewalk, if we're going to do a sidewalk?
If I may, what I think you might want to do is use this concept as leverage, perhaps, and or just inquire with Public Works, ask a traffic engineer, what is the complete streets design concept for this area? What would you consider? And see what they say back to you. I would just inquire, if nothing else, and use this as another tool in your toolbox.
Okay. Thanks for that, Josh. Any other comments, opinions? Yes, go ahead, Meg.
Yeah, so I agree, and that's why I was stating earlier that if there's any flexibility in the plan that exists, you know, to increase it in length so that you know, it's more functional. You had asked earlier, you know, if the committee wanted to just sort of abandon this plan and move on, or to support it. And I think with encouraging that type of a change would be prudent.
So that means more
You could
money.
also go after the second block. Even if you got one block, there may be, you know, I could see Josh pushing back saying, well, where's the funding? We're already running out of money. Then we would have to somehow, and I don't know if it's through this Safe Routes to School or whatever, but say, we need the connecting block now. And I don't know who writes these grants, but I mean, there's 2-day ways to do it.
Well, just the fact that it creates a more unsafe environment for the children walking seems to me like it would create a little more perhaps priority for Public Works to get that second block done.
I agree. I actually had heard, and I don't know if John's aware, I don't know if it's accurate because I hear different things, but from what I understand is the grant itself didn't even really fund the full block. And somehow Public Works was having to pull money elsewhere to make this a go project, but it had been festering since, I don't remember, 2018 or 19, and they needed to get it off the dime or they're going to lose their money. So it'll come down to funding.
Yeah, I mean, it always does. And you're right. So their first application was for 100,000, and that wasn't enough to quite finish the job or even get the job kind of off the ground. But at the time, it wasn't. That was the standard. 100,000 per block was even high. You know, we saw stuff in Templeton $40,000 a block like 8 years ago. So it's like, so we're chasing, we're chasing inflation. All sectors are, right? And so you might hear that, you'll hear that now, or you hear that from Josh, and we see it on the 46 as we're trying to widen it. It's and it's very, very expensive project, but in the same order of magnitude, but just smaller. Excuse me. Um, I don't think that it's too much to ask them. I think, the county to go another block. If they were pushed politically to do it, I think they could. Um, but it's a tricky dance. It's a tricky thing to do. Timing the grant program that we're offering, certainly could be used for that second block, but then you're not getting the grand design. You're not getting the 11th Street, or you're not getting the design of Los Osos Valley Road, or even some money that might pay for a pedestrian bridge over a drainage there, or a culvert is probably what is needed there. And that's going to be the crux of perhaps that one, unless right. And I'm talking about the Los Osos Valley connection now. So so that's why they're all trade-offs, and then that's why kind of a ranking and scoring exercise, a simple one with just a couple of factors or virtues, or however you want to do it, and just to figure that out would and then you'd be helping the county out, because you will have gone through it, and then the planners will go, oh great, you've done the heavy lifting, you've figured out the priority, thank you very much, we'll get behind it. So yeah.
So can we assume that another $170,000 will be needed for that next block? So minimum.
Yeah, it would. And yeah, I would guess that's fair based on what's happening now. Yeah. Crazy, huh?
Yeah. I said that to the PTA, president of the PTA, and she was flabbergasted that it would cost that much money to do one block of sidewalk. So the committee members, which would be myself, Meg, Trish and Jeff, Jim Hale, need to make a recommendation to Locac about this. And so Meg, I think you've pretty much nailed it as far as how we want to approach this problem. We don't want to give it up, but we do want to see it go another block at a minimum to 7th Street. And we're just gonna, push whatever buttons we need to get to try to get the money to make that happen. And in the rest of this meeting, we're going to talk about some of these other priorities and get those things lined up. So is there any more discussion on this? I think we need to take a vote on that. Oh, Josh, you wanted to comment.
Yes, if I could, I'm reviewing the 2015 bikeways plan, and I see that we have that classified as a existing class 3 bikeway.
Correct.
And what you may wish to do is request to the BAC, the Slope County BAC, is that this be reconsidered as a class 3. If you notice, we have share roads down by the bay as a medallion on the road. If I recall correctly, this is one of my duties as the institutional memory for the committee, is that this probably was a class 2 bikeway. It is existing midway at the elementary school going east. And it is the
Okay, well,
same road.
I'm gonna help you out here because I pulled up, can you see this? Can you see this map? Hold on a second.
No, I think you need to hit share screen first.
Okay, let me go back. Let me go back. Here we go. All right, now can you see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so here's the crosswalk. Here's there are the sharrows, right? That you're talking about, Josh. You go ahead. I just wanted to, and that goes, we're going towards the bay now. Here's 7th Street, the four-way stop. And you were saying that this is right now a class 3, and you're suggesting we get together with the BAC and ask for what?
Class 2.
Which would be widen the street.
It would widen the street. That's one concern. Dan Burden in the Walkable Community Concepts has mentioned that there are 19 other uses for a class 2 bike lane other than for bicyclists. And this is one of them. This could be another way to get that paved. There's the other part of this though. When you put in a bike lane, to Caltrans standards, it is 4 feet wide on both sides of the street. That makes the road wider. This reduces the lateral friction, the visual lateral friction that helps with speed, but reduces traffic calming. So it's this double-edged sword here. You may request some type of buffered bike lane, which will make the road even wider, but at least will put the pedestrian a little further away from the actual traveled traffic.
This will be
gutters and sidewalk.
a little bit in my presentation. We'll kind of want to go through some of this because one of my concerns actually is in one of the slides is as soon as you put a class 2 in the existing class 2, what you've really compromised is class 2 lane is exclusive for bikes. Pedestrians and vehicles are not supposed to be in the class 2. And so everywhere where we have class 2 now, if there's no sidewalks or alternate path, it forces the pedestrian, they don't have a place to go.
Actually, there's nothing in the vehicle code that prevents pedestrians from using a class 2 bike lane.
All right, well, we can go back and review that again. I think your plan specifies that. That's where I picked it up from, but that's fine. That's not.
Well, could it
be an area to talk about?
Could it be a multi-use path instead of a bike path?
Oh, I think so. I mean, class 1s actually can be, pedestrians can use it. That's what's a little bit confusing here. Class 3, you got the problem with, well, you can have pedestrians on a class 3, but they're going face into traffic of bikes going the other way. The pedestrians, and part of the problem we've got with ATP right now, in my opinion, is a lot of potential pedestrians choose not to walk because it's dangerous. And so what we're trying to do is figure out a way so that people feel it's safe, they can get out of their vehicles to do local things like that. But I mean, we can debate it here and learn a little more, but that it will be one of the issues we need to learn about to see how we can do this better.
Agreed. And Jeff, I don't want to take away from your presentation. So I want to bottom line this, Josh, based on what you're suggesting is that we could go to the BAC and have them look at El Morro and suggest perhaps using creating a bike path there that could be used by pedestrians, accomplish the same goal without building a sidewalk, curbs and gutter, or with the sidewalk, I don't know. Where does the funding come from for that?
Well, the reason why we have a bikeways plan is that you create a gestalt of an idea in a community. You make your connections. Once you have it in the plan, as John has mentioned, then it gets greater validity or it's accepted. If it's not in the plan, then if funding becomes like, if we have a shovel-ready funding for some kind of stimulus package that comes along, we could hit the ground running and say, this is in the plan. The BAC meets quarterly, so you don't have to wait for anything. The traffic engineers can look at this plan and say, okay, we have it in the plan and we can go ahead. We don't need approval from the BAC or the Board of Supervisors because the Board of Supervisors have already approved this plan. Once you have that, several things can happen. You can have the benefit of multiple funding sources come together, and then you can make a connected system sometimes, and that gains higher priority in our ranking, but also for, say, state or federal ranking, because they want to see the grand jury specified connectability as one of the most critical needs that is required for our plan. So that has risen to the top of our ranking schedule. If it provides connectivity, then it raises up higher, given all the other little ranking criteria.
So
Josh, thank you so much for your institutional knowledge. I really appreciate that. I just want to try to, for myself and perhaps for others, connect this. If we were to say yes to the project between 9th and 8th as a sidewalk project, it's already funded. And then we go to the BAC and say, and we make it very clear to Public Works that this is actually really, really a priority because of the unsafe condition it creates, and then get the BAC to include a class 2 path from 8th all the way down to 3rd Street, would that, in a sense, accomplish our goal of getting pedestrians and bikes safely down to 3rd Street? Is that logical?
I would think it's, this is an engineering term, I guess. It's better than it was. I don't think it's ideal, but there's no reason why people cannot walk in a class 2 bike lane. The vehicle code states that cyclists are to go in the same direction as traffic. And if there is no sidewalk, pedestrians are supposed to walk against traffic. So I think the conflicts between the cyclist and the pedestrian and the motorist are minimized if all users obey the vehicle code.
Well, unfortunately, if you're walking from the elementary school to Baywood on the sidewalk, you will be walking in the direction of traffic. And this is the problem that I see. There's no safe way for you to cross over to the other side. So you would be walking with the traffic coming towards you. And there's really no better place to walk on that side either. So it's just,
this is where sidewalks have the advantage for pedestrians. Pedestrians can walk on a sidewalk in any direction they wish.
Yeah. So where do we want to go now? What do we want to do here? We want to come up with a recommendation for the council?
So can I ask a question?
Of course.
So I want to go back to what Josh was just talking about, sort of a complete street theory for that section from 3rd to 9th. Is there a way to, if we were to fold it all into a complete street concept like John has talked about, would that help us? Maybe you throw the sidewalks on the north side of the street and you do a bike lane on the other side, or vice versa. Well, I can't do vice versa because
Mm-mm.
you have a sidewalk already going in on the north. But there's class 3 biking there, a bike lane there, but there's no markings. It's not class 2. And so it needs to at least be class 2 on that route.
Well, I have to agree. John, you have your hand up. What would you like to add?
Oh, I just had a couple of observations, two observations. And first, I just want to say I've worked with Josh for a number of years and seen him at the BAC, and I love what he has to say and how he thinks about things, and his institutional knowledge is great. And I enjoy bumping into him in the street and talking shop. So it's good. It's good to get him fired up and pointed in the right direction. But the observation I really wanted to make, secondly, was, I was just playing around with the aerial photography and then remembering if you go down El Moro to 4th Street, there's that house kind of on the corner of 4th where the RVs kind of always parked out in front of on El Moro, and there is sidewalk, curb, and gutter there. So if
That house had to put in a sidewalk
yes, so and you notice
right
it's only
here.
it's at 4th, yeah, and
Here's
yeah,
4th Street.
yep,
Are you seeing
right,
it?
yes. I
Okay.
can see it now, right? So it's only half the, and this is at least 15 years old, right? So it may be more, and maybe they did some development, and it's possible that the property owner did that. So,
Yes, the property owner did do it, is my understanding.
right. And so I guess I just wanted to point out that is going back to why, why does it have to be a sidewalk, curb, and gutter? Are there design standards in place? At some point in the county books, there's kind of some evidence already here saying that that's what the county wants to see. It's weird that it's just half a block, right? And then we know on the other side, on the south side of El Moro, then it does, for half a block, it does its own thing where the sidewalk is inlaid, right? It's not right at the curb, but then, yeah, just to the west there. So
Down here,
yeah, right.
here.
So that one's split. It's split. It's got ADA on the curb, and then it's sort of
Here.
a standard sidewalk, curb, and gutter right up to the curb line. But then halfway on the other half of the parcel on the east side, it goes in, and there's kind of a buffered little riparian zone.
Here, right here.
Yeah, it's shaped differently, right? So so who knows? What I wanted to just mention that as far as our agency, the regional agency is concerned, we have in our regional transportation plan 3rd Street to 11th Street as denoted as a project. And we don't quite know what that project is, but it has that number I mentioned earlier, that $1.2 million associated with it as a cost estimate from about 4 years ago. But I like where this conversation's going for the ultimate vision being more of a complete street, factoring in more uses, and if that whole thing could, if get repaved and good striping going down, it could really bring the kind of level of service or the useful utility need of this corridor up to highest and best purpose. And I think it's a little catchphrase, for trying to get that extra block, is trying to achieve a highest and best purpose is a goal that civil engineers kind of like to hear.
Okay.
So those are my observations.
Good, good, good. Okay. So I'm going to touch very on something that Jeff Krebs already brought up, and that is combining heavily trafficked streets such as El Moro with active transportation. And I think there is inherently a conflict with this. And if you look at the bikeway plan, typically you're going to find that the bike paths follow the collector streets. Well, that's great if you're an experienced cyclist like Jim Hale, Josh, Jeff Bartel. They're out there on the streets, they're cycling all the time, no biggie. But for someone like me, no way. You're not going to find me on these busy streets. And this is really where I started, is why I said, why can't we have, well, wait, let me go up here. Let me go back this way. Sorry, I hope I'm not making anybody dizzy by doing this. Why can't we go on a nice friendly street like Santa Maria? That's where I like to walk. It's nice and quiet. People walk on this street all the time. If I'm going to be riding a bike or walking, you're not going to find me on El Moro. I'm going to be on this street. And this is where I think active transportation needs to take a break from what has been the traditional thinking when it comes to putting in bike paths. Like if you had, anyway, that's just my personal point of view on that. That's where I started out with my thoughts about, here's Baywood Elementary School right here. This is where they drop off the high school kids. And if you actually go there when the kids are getting out of school, you'll find most of them hop on their bikes and they go on this street and not on the other street. That's just what I've observed. So I'm going to get off that now. So what's our recommendation? Meg.
I'm kind of sticking with what I had said before.
Yeah, and I support Meg. I think we need to at least start with what they have and try to encourage and find funding to do the next block.
And get it at least down to 7th, and maybe I'll be at the BAC meeting next month and talk to them about, and Josh, you can coach me on this, on getting the rest of El Moro possibly turned into a class 2 bike path, so that we might actually see it sooner rather than later.
I would also go back to the complete street concept as well. If you look at the Madonna Road intersection where the post office is, and they put that bike path, that dedicated bike path only on one side of the road there for bikes to get through. And so if you think about it as a complete street and you put a dedicated bike path perhaps on the north side if possible, or from 7th to 3rd Street or 4th Street on the north side with the concrete, but somehow or another, I would recommend that we think about ways to propose more than just getting the sidewalk for 1 or 2 or 3 blocks.
Okay, so I think we have a pretty good idea of what our recommendation is. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate that as well. And certainly, John, for the highest and best purpose, which I've written and circled on my notes. I want to move on because I know Jeff has a presentation he wants to make, and we're already past an hour. So obviously we're doing good work here. Jeff, you want to go ahead and get started?
All right. Hopefully we can do a share screen here. I've not done this before.
Okay, let's see. Let me see. How do I?
You go down to share screen and hit
Wait,
multiple-
I have to make him host, don't I?
No,
Well,
you just have to give him access. Multiple people can
Hold
share.
on, I have to click on your name here more. Hold on, I think I know how to do this. Make co-host.
You don't have to make them co-host.
There we go.
Just-
Okay, I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, now you should be able to go down to the bottom of your screen and where it says share screen and click on that.
All right. And let me see here. I think I got it here. Let's see if we got it. Is everybody seeing this stuff?
Not
at this
yet.
point?
Oh, yeah, there we are. Okay.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and first kind of introduce my first thought process of what was going on here. And part of it had to do with conversation, a little back and forth with Josh, and the knowing this February BAC meeting was coming up, learning a little bit about that the current plan is needing to be revised or has been revised, but hasn't actually been sent to the Board of Supervisors. Has been kind of sitting there. And there's also a revised table of how do you prioritize bike projects, that type of thing. So there was some urgency in my mind that if we were going to have any input, we needed to try to get that into the February plan period time. But, you know, as Josh was saying, well, if you've got a project, you better have a good reason why. Help us understand why that's an important thing to do. And so as I started thinking about the bike side of things, and then also thinking about the pedestrian, then I'm thinking more enveloped. All right, what can be a skeleton of an AT program for Los Osos? And then how do I fill the bike component into it as a bit of urgency? And then doing that, as Dave was pointing out, there's one good thing about saying, well, I've got long-term plans and there's this type of thing. We aren't going to get anything 100% accomplished in a year, but if we have a vision that, you know, what can we reasonably expect over a 5-year window if we're working on it, what are those critical things, then that gives us, I think, something tangible, or at least something satisfying that we're actually making progress. And to the point where you really look at all of the multi-use trails that have been in the 2009 Estero plan are the exact same trails that are in the 2020 Los Osos plan. And as I've just learned today, they really aren't any projects. They're just ideas sitting out there. There's no work being done on them at this point. They're placeholders, but when I finally got a hold of really what the Parks and Recs table of projects are, it's not even on there. It's not on the radar screen. So, I mean, that's kind of where I started. So one of the things that I did get from Skip, because as my note says, actually this draft that's getting ready to go to the Board of Supervisors isn't even on the website for communities to look at or comment or give any feedback. And this table comes from that, and he had given it to me because I wasn't real happy with or I didn't think that this table, which scores bike projects, really worked well for neighborhoods. And in listening to what the bike team works, listening to John Donoso talk about, we're really looking regional connectivity, we're looking county general plans. Even in the Los Osos community plan, nobody had really responsibility to look at neighborhood streets. What were the issues needed for neighborhood streets and from those kind of projects? So this was just, and I don't know how much people are getting into these type of things, but when I start looking at this, one of the things I think we should offer is, what are other criteria that might advantage neighborhoods like ourselves to get some priorities on projects if we were to put one in that's in a neighborhood like El Moro or whatever? And a couple just ideas, and these are just brainstorm ideas, and we're running with some urgency here, but one might be closes a gap in a community AT network. Maybe that would get a scoring point, where right now, if we put something in and we say we're trying to get this network going, it doesn't pass muster here. The other thing is if you notice, they only use class 1, class 2 projects. And John made a good point here. I hadn't heard that term here. The betterment thing is now a program. When I was talking with Josh Roberts a while back, and I asked him, do you have a consolidated table here of all the public works projects for Los Osos? And frankly, he just said, well, you have to go to the bike, you got to go to trails, you got to go to betterment, you got to go to slow. He was giving me a raft of places I had to go find these projects. And it's just very difficult. So one of the things, and the reason I'm kind of doing some urgency in this particular meeting, I'm actually going to be out of pocket here for the next 3 months. And so I can just somewhat throw this stuff over the wall, and you can chew on it and decide how much you want to put into this. But part of this will be for the Bikeway meeting for February. Anyway, if you look at this table, you can make your own recommendations as to what would be legitimate criteria to help advance neighborhood AT. And as I said, a couple things that I had were closing the gap in an AT network that we defined. It looks at potential of pedestrians. How are we encouraging pedestrians if we've put together some sort of an AT network and we've now got protected bikeways, so now the pedestrians feel safer? Anyway, that's my first kind of opening salvo here to try to get us going. Now let's see, how do I get to the next page here? This doesn't page, so.
Hey, Jeff?
Yeah.
Can you click on the little plus at the top of your screen to make the thing get bigger? Thanks.
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out how to get to the next page here. So, oh, there we go. That's the same page. So this isn't going to go page, I guess. So, so anyway, yeah, my 2 points here were we need to be able to have, as a community or public needs to be able to review whatever draft is being considered, so that we can see, make comment to it before it actually goes forward. And then consider, there really weren't a lot of changes to their table. I think the main thing that I saw were they didn't have a fatality score before, and they now do that, and collision rates are a little bit different, but there really isn't anything to do with communities, urban areas where we have multi-use trails, if you will. All right, so my next point here, and I've got about 12 slides, and I know we're running late, so I'm going to try to go pretty fast. So the Bikeways plan, the content is really, as best I can describe it, it's owned by Public Works because it's part of the road network or street network. They depend on the BAC, which is an advisory committee, I guess not a committee, much similar to Locac, gives advice to the planning committee or the planning department in the county. I think the bike committee does a lot more of the hard lifting to put the plan together and stuff like that. But I think, as best I can tell, it's a Public Works document. And the issue, again, is a rub for us as a community. The class 1 trails, and I know Josh tried to explain a little bit of this to me, and then I got a little different explanation by Parks and Rec yesterday. The class 1 trails, actually Parks and Rec own those or are responsible for those, and they're also responsible for multi-use trails. It's not a Public Works project. The exception I was now learning is, well, that's true if the class 1 trail departs from the roadway system in some fashion, probably like the El Moro Trail we have going to the middle school. But if you've got a separated class 1 and it pretty much follows the road kind of adjacent to it with some buffering or something to that extent, that might still sit with Public Works. It's a nuance, but the issue for us is most of the things that we're going to be looking for active transportation, we're calling multi-use, and it doesn't really even fit within the plan, with limited exceptions. The other thing that I thought was interesting to me, class 3 bike routes, they don't have capital improvement projects. Essentially, they're just lane striping. They're not making any widths or anything like that. In my opinion, that's a detriment to us, where the same road surface needs to serve all 3 parties, pedestrians as well. What happens, so if we're going to go ahead and put a class 3 lane in, and this could be a debate with Josh, so I may not have this fully right, it seems like there should be an equivalent betterment project to make sure that the pedestrian, he can't even sometimes, or she can't even step off the road because you got bushes or you got deep sand or whatever next to it. They have to walk on the pavement, and some areas you can, some you can't. So I think that's another area that needs to be probably looked at there. There is no formal process, which was a big learning for me going through a lot of the community plan, looking at circulation. Circulation is only looking at impact, the negative impact to vehicle movement. And they actually use an LOS metric, which is no longer acceptable for community plans. It has to be I think it's vehicle miles traveled or something like that. It's a different measure because they're trying to get people to be more active transportation type thing. So there is no formal process to look at the safety of our streets today. The only, well, the one is if there's a fatality or a major collision, or they'll look at those specific instances, but where we're trying to encourage pedestrians and people to get out and feel safe on roads, there's no metric when you start looking at, hey, we're going to go ahead and build this new development, it's going to add traffic to these streets. It's not even a consideration. So let's see if I can get down to the next one here. The other one, I'm going to have to see if I can make it a little bit smaller. We don't need to go into the complete streets. There's these assembly bills. All of these things are really targeted, and they've been going on since around 2002, mid 2000s, to keep encouraging active transportation in different fashions. A new one to me, which I thought was pretty cool, this is effective this month. It's Assembly Bill 773, and it amends the vehicle code. And I've highlighted it here. It's a slow street program to ensure neighborhood local streets get traffic calming. And before, when I would talk, I think at traffic and circulation stuff, and we would talk to some of the traffic planners. Well, they really, they can put signage up and stuff like that, but they really can't prevent public from using whatever road they choose to use. This actually allows them to, this gives them now the authority, because there's more state drive to get active transportation in neighborhoods. So I think this is a pretty good win for a tool that we can use when we're trying to describe something we need, and tools that Public Works can use. Now, the issue here is going to be, and then the other thing I wanted to point out, the Board of Supervisors is actually come on, and Locac as well. They support all of the active transportation benefits And this has all been affirmed with this compact that they've signed. And so the compact purpose was, hey, we got growth that our county has to take. Everybody's going to take a component of it, all these different communities, but we're going to do it without reducing the residents' quality of life. And the Board of Supervisors are on board with that. Now, the one thing that now has to happen on this, now that this law has been enacted, the county doesn't have policy that supports that. So as I understand, I'm not a government law guy, but I think what has to now happen is the vehicle code's been amended. The Board of Supervisors have to adopt that they're willing to have this as part of their program. And I think that's an important thing, as we as having a neighborhood, we've got another tool in our tool bag if they allow us. So the next thing I wanted to go through, all right, so I know we needed to go through bike deals. Well, I wanted to start looking at stakeholder groups on AT. And I just, it's hard to brainstorm with yourself, but that's pretty much what I had to do here. But I started looking at it and I tried to break it down the way that the bike group did. And they use the term commuters, and it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to work. It means I'm destination bound. And that can be a school. And it can, and if you think about it, it could be school in session. Maybe it's an after school program or it's a PTA meeting. You might have a different set of people that are trying to get there. And can they, and if they're local people, maybe they can get there rather than getting in their cars if we have ways to do that. So I just, it's a starter list here. And, shoppers, I'm using both LOVR commercial and Baywood as two key areas that kind of connect our town, if you will. And, I just, adults and children, again, their needs might be different. Well, then we've got recreation. It's destination based. People are going to be wanting to go out, and, these are just some ideas. And it turned out we got a lot of destination based places we can go. The other one is community events. If we've got good AT, when we get to these Monday night free concerts down here again, and we've got some bike racks, Oktoberfest or the farmers market, or even the concerts on the green, you can think of other things. If we've got a good network, people are going to be more inclined to be able to either walk there or ride a bike there. And then a destination bus stops as well. I threw that in thinking, well, that's another reason maybe we need to have that, may be pedestrian oriented more than bikes, but I just started doing that. And then recreation. And the way I'm looking at this is probably what you were talking about, Deborah, as well. You might want to go out for a leisurely bike ride, but you want to have a safe way to do it. You really didn't have a place you were really going. You just want to go out and get some fresh air and get some exercise. And so you've got people walking through the neighborhood. This is what you see all the time. Sometimes I'll see the families and bike riding, or I see baby strollers and people with, well, it's usually wagons, people going down to the farmer's market so they can carry their goods back, I guess. And then just people that are just by themselves that go out for walks. So one thing we need, I think, as a group, and you could take this as a starter list, but you need a brainstorm of the kind of stakeholders and events that we think we need to experience within AT. Let's keep going here. So my next deal was, all right, I need to create an AT plan. So first thing I did was I pulled this. This is the neighborhood. These are all our own unique neighborhoods as the planning department is depicted them in the plan. If we had no constraints, and I kind of use this as the starter point, I say, all right, I want to connect two main locations, and I use the coastal axis in Baywood business district as one, and I use the commercial LOVR as the second one. If I'm destination bound, I want to make that the most efficient route. I'd want to do that line. Well, now we've got an existing community. Oh, and then what I would do with that is then I'd call that my spine, and then I'd take the neighborhoods and I'd hook into the spine, and everybody as best as possible. That would be one of the more efficient ways to do it. We can't do that because it's impractical, but that was kind of the start process of what do I need to do for AT here. What I ended up coming up with, which I thought was pretty good, and Dave and I took a walk around just to get a feel of what this is. Part of this came out of a lot of the work, some of the work that we had done in the TNC in scoping out some of these other projects. That, again, what's kind of interesting is Public Works this year is carrying no bike projects on their capital improvement table. If you go back and look at the RIF project submission last year, it's got the whole suite table there. And it has bike projects on there that don't match. They are the projects that Public Works kept coming to us saying, prioritize these, and we did. So, but in any event, what I suggest as a core loop, and again, I'm trying to get from here to here, basically. So I start with, this is and this gets into the point, is it a multi-use or is it a class 1? And I can't get my mind around the advantage or the disadvantage, other than maybe class 1 gets better attention, and maybe the core loop we want as hard surface. Because the other thing I put on the stakeholder list, I didn't go into that. I put it on the right side. What do we do with people with handicaps and disabilities? Do we just ignore them? We may not be able to give them full complement of AT, but there ought to be something there. Seems like hard surface might be a component that we may want to have, rather than I envision this DG type thing, which is it would be satisfactory for me, but it might not be for all parties. And in urban areas, sometimes you have people with road tires, bikes, not just these things can use path tires. So these are things we just need to think about. Anyway, my thought was starting at 4th, we've got Sweet Springs right here. Anyway, starting at 4th, we need Pismo, which is dirt, all the way up to 10th. And our old project list actually showed we want all of this in an old Parks and Rec. If you go back and look at Parks and Rec's project, it's not a project list, it's a figure. It actually shows this whole thing as either a bike lane or a multi-use, essentially the same type of thing. At 10th, if you stop here, all right, when you go, now this is going to be, even though it looks like a busy road, there's a roadblock here, there's a roadblock here. So it's like cul-de-sacs. So you got a very slow road, very little traffic. You don't need to do much. Oh, and this is also a bike boulevard. If I were, this is from the school. It's also a bike lane going through here, which I've got another chart to show. But anyway, there's not a lot of, I wouldn't suggest any work needs to be done here, other than you get down in here and you start talking about, do I need a sidewalk? You know, there are a couple areas. Are we concerned because it gets busier in this commercial area? We got to watch out. What are we going to do about the pedestrian? There's a couple gaps here. Then you get over onto LOVR. And as Dave pointed out, there's a couple gaps here for pedestrians. They got to step in the road or in the class 2 lane. But right now we got full bike capability here. So it gets you to the commercial area. And then this is where, now when I put out, I think in one of my first ideas, looking at, and I call this Ravina right away. And I'm not real conversant with how strong the Public Works right away are. I understood that they actually had, this is like a given to them when development or property rights or whatever, they knew they had the ability to put a road in here. Trails actually says I've got I think it's a multi-use path. It originally said a bike path and then a multi-use path. So I'm showing, just as a concept, as a pilot, put a Ravina in here, forget development. We need to just get to the core loop done. Then you get kind of hung up right here with a class 2 and you got class 3 down here, but you got to get around Sweet Springs. Then you got your core loop. So that was my first concept of just getting started with something that gets neighborhoods started to get some connectivity here. So then I went down, and I'll go through these fairly quick. You can just see on the right-hand side, I started all these blue stars. I just started saying, well, what are all these recreation destinations we've got? We got a lot. And so when we start looking at different neighborhoods saying, well, where are their primary destinations? Well, maybe if you get way over to the left side here, maybe their primary recreation are going to be these down here. These guys, these might be we aren't going to have super wide networks, but everybody will have an ability to get somewhere, if you will. But we do want them to have connectivity to the core loop. Let's see here. I had one other one I might have skipped through, but the other one was just showing the commercial areas. Now this actually shows, now I'm trying to get into the bikeways, saying, well, what are we asking them to do for us? Well, what I think we're asking them to do, and whether it's them or Parks and Rec, this is where it gets dicey. We need a class 1 here. And I could see crossing these roads, we would ask for speed tables. So that slows this traffic down, and it allows people to feel comfortable walking here. They feel comfortable walking here. There's no real work other than a couple sidewalks or paths, depending on how you want to call it. And then this is fairly significant. It's a half-mile project on Ravina. That would accomplish, that's how it would complement to the current bikeways plan. You can add to it as we start talking through the El Moro project might be another one you want to add in, but you could start seeing how does that all fit in. Let me keep going here. I don't know if you're seeing the whole thing. Mine I'm having to give partial screens, so I'm not sure if you're seeing everything.
Yeah, we're seeing what you're seeing, I think.
Okay, unfortunately, yeah, it's just the way it's doing this. So this is the multi-use paths. So as I said, what was interesting, and I just learned this yesterday or the day before, I finally got a chance to talk with Sean. He gave me their project, and I asked, can I have the project list that's associated with this figure that's in the plan? There isn't one. This is it. They're just concepts. And until somebody really says this is a project, and it's his other point was, and that's also can be dependent on development. So if somebody was going to go develop something, then they'd probably look at this, say how much do we want it? Well, some of our stuff's in existing areas, and so it sits there and nobody does anything with it, because I think, as others have pointed out, unless you really say this is important to you, it doesn't rise up to be looked at. The other one that I'm going to point out when I'm making a recommendation, this is key too. This multi-use going from this area down into here is another one that I believe we're going to want to have as in the immediate 5-year game plan, if you will. Let's see if I got anything else here. The one thing it's not super material here. How do I get up a little bit here? The Ravina's been kind of a pistol for us, at least local folks, because it was advertised with Public Works. It was going to be one thing, and now we're starting, all of a sudden it shifted and it's taking a little different path. This seems more complicated because I do think that gets out of right of ways and it becomes a harder project, but what the actual route is, I don't think is super material to the concept, but this is just kind of where I was headed on this one. This was another one I just came up with today. You mentioned one of the projects you're interested in is the project out to Montana de Oro. Well, this is news to me. I had been following the coastal trail progress, if you will, for quite a bit of time, but I hadn't over the last year and a half. They got some new neat stuff that actually just came out mid last year. And this, you can go onto the coastal California government site and get all the detail. But interesting, this is one of your selling points, or our selling points. This is part of their planned trail. The other selling point for 3rd Street that I mentioned is kind of important to us. Excuse me. There's detail of where the plans go within Los Osos as well. And one of them happens to be coming up through Baywood Central, the Central Business District, up through 3rd Street, around Pismo, up 4th. So it complements something that the state's trying to accomplish as well, if you will. But I would encourage you to pull that up. It's all on a graphic deal, and you can go all the way down as to how much stuff. One thing I did learn, I'd heard it was going to happen, but part of their access is going to be through, one of their main coastal access is going to be through Butte into the state parks, where I don't know that was being considered early on. But anyway, that's the latest thinking. That can actually be, I think, a good selling point for what you want to do. So now I kind of go into, all right, well, if we accept some means of a loop that I would call the core loop, which then I go back to my first slide and I say, what kind of metric do I want to give myself some good points for? This is a critical link to me to get the project to work. Then we as a group can go look, and I just drew these in randomly, but all right, let's look at this neighborhood here. How can we tie theirs? It may not be in the next 5 years, but it can start working the plan. How can we get them to, some of those starred locations that we said, these are recreation things, that type of thing. And just frankly, go around each one, and it's overwhelming to say, what's the network we need for this? But we can start saying, well, here's all the attributes we have on those previous slides. How can we look like we're one of these neighborhood people, one of those stakeholders in this neighborhood? How do we serve or get served by AT, and just go around? I mean, take one every couple months or something and build complement of the whole AT program, if you will. And again, these are just random, you may come up with a different grouping to make it into bite-sized chunks. Let's see what else I got here. So I think I'm down to my last slide here. I know we're running late here. So I'd really request we ask the BAC to let us see how they've revised or what their plan is. I take Josh's point on the class 2. That wasn't my understanding, and I may have misread it. But when you start looking in Los Osos areas, some areas off pavement are walkable. Either somebody's asphalted it in or bricked it in or made it a parking area or something like that. A lot of them are deep sand, or they've got ice plant, or some reason people are just not, myself included, aren't going to step off to walk off the pavement. So when we look at our existing class 2, class 3 networks, we need to understand how it is compromising our pedestrian use, or if it is, and if it is, what's our solution? All right, and then this was before I started understanding this betterment thing. When we start talking class 3 bike routes, the capital cost component was, what if we're displacing pedestrians? Maybe that's a betterment project, but somehow, since they don't really factor that into their plan, that's somehow it needs to be factored in. And we've already talked about why I think neighborhoods, when you look at their table, obviously there was a big drive to get regional connectivity, and a lot of the arterial, I'm saying the wrong word, but the arterial ways through safely for bike riders, let's say going to Montana de Oro and stuff. But it really was never really, I mean, even though you can lay a network out of 3s and 2s and you have safe route to schools, there was a focus project on that, but there really wasn't neighborhood AT. I was pleased to hear, I did understand that either the BAC or Locac did do pedestrian counts or bike counts. You could probably do that on neighboring streets and say, well, if I made this street safe, how many this street and maybe 1 or 2 over might cause people to gravitate to this one and start getting an idea of how many more people can we get going on some of this stuff. Still not going to count the people that are reluctant to get out until it is safe, but it's a start because we don't have the data. It was interesting when we were doing our 4th Street project down here, they did a traffic count. They did end up doing 3 traffic counts because they kept not believing the numbers that they were so high. They actually then positioned a traffic engineer out to do manual counts with a traffic, and it was interesting. She did write pedestrians. So she sat here, I don't know, for a couple, 3 hours, and all the pedestrians and the bikes and speeds of all the vehicles. And it turned out the data, they had to extrapolate it, but it came out, it was all pretty accurate. But it was definitely interesting. But anyway, I propose you see, is there a pilot over some way that maybe we can suggest, can you pick these 4 or 5 intersections and get us some data so we can start helping with some of that. The other thing I want to point out is Public Works. And you look at their circulation plan and in the EIR and stuff like that, make a bold statement. And again, they're only looking at it from the vehicle standpoint. They consider all debris deficiencies on our roads as cosmetic. Well, maybe that's true because the cars are just going to whip up a little bit of sand on their tires under the fenders, but it's way different for bicycles and pedestrians. And so I think we need to raise the specter that it's important to prioritize some of these drainage programs where they are affecting our roads, where we really are trying to encourage people to walk. I'm not going to walk on areas if we've had major storms or even minor storms, we get a lot of drainage and stuff. So my recommendation, I'm done here, I think, but either we want to do this 4th to Pismo. I want to see a class 1 or multi, somehow a separated walkway and bikeway. We want Ravenna to, it's the right of way trying to get here. Now you can actually look at that, and you can actually, a cleaner way might be to the end of Palisades, but I don't know how difficult that is. But all we're trying to do is achieve that portion of the loop. But you might be able to do the north end of Palisades to Ramona, or you might be able to get to the end of Farrell. It could, both of those could serve the same purpose.
Jeff,
excuse me.
Jeff, can I just, you know what, we're running very late and I think you're coming to the end of your presentation. If you would be so kind as to send this to the committee, or you could just send it to me and I'll get it out to the rest of the committee members. You have so much amazing information here, and I can't thank you enough for your logical, organized thinking on this. This is exactly what we need. This is exactly where we need to be going. And I just want to kind of wrap things up because we've been 2 hours now,
Oh, I
and
know.
I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But thank you. And thank you everyone for staying here and listening to this great presentation from Jeff. I think we could be a model community for active transportation. I know Josh has sent us information how in Europe they make the cars go the long way around and give the pedestrians and cyclists the direct route. And that's something that can happen here. We can make active transportation a priority, and this committee can make it happen, I believe. I want to open it up to final thoughts from anybody. And wow, Jeff, you're a hero.
Well, no, that's just a straw man. I mean, it's an idea, and I had to come up with something, but the real drive is get some input into the BAC if that's critical, because I think they have to get to the Board of Supervisors soon. That was my concern.
Okay, yes, good point, good point. So we will follow up on that most definitely. And we have an opportunity to talk to Bruce Gibson next week. He will be at our Locac meeting. And so it's always a good opportunity for us to speak to him directly about any of this. Anybody else? Any final thoughts, comments that you'd like to make before we close it up? And we'll start up again. Let's maybe make a date for our next meeting. In February. Is Thursday a good for everyone?
What day, Deborah?
Oh, well,
Yeah,
15th?
Thursdays works well for me.
The 17th?
how about the 24th? Oh, no, when's the BAC meeting?
That is, hang on, I think it's Tuesday. 16th, let me look at my calendar here.
Okay,
Deborah, Locac is on the 24th of February, so
we don't want to do it on, how about on the
So you-
17th?
yeah, as long as you could do it prior,
17th is good.
that works for me.
I actually have a meeting that evening with S&T.
Okay, can we make it a different day?
What about the 10th?
10th works.
I'll be out of town.
Do you want to make it on a Wednesday, the 16th?
That's fine. Wednesday, the 16th?
Fine.
Works for me.
Jeff Krebs, when are you leaving to go out of town?
I leave Friday.
Okay, all right.
Death Valley, here I come.
We'll miss you. We'll try to get a lot done while you're gone.
No, I just wanted to put some seed stuff in. I mean, just take it wherever you want, but now you at least there, like you say, it's dense stuff. It's hard to see, and you know, it's crazy. Even though you sent this circulation study and said, well, read up on this. Well, I'll be darned, that thing has been changed since you guys saw it in May. They went through, and for whatever reason, it's now called a circulation study. When I was talking with Josh early, it was an RIF study, and he said, we don't do circulation studies. Okay, and he explained why. Well, they went through and took the same study you had and changed it now. It's all called circulation. It's really, really hard to make sure you got the latest document that has the most accurate information. So,
Well,
crazy
thank you
stuff.
for your work on that, Jeff, very much. John, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, I just want to comment on Jeff's presentation. I honestly, hands down, think that's probably one of the best community bike active transportation presentations by a community member that I've ever seen. And I learned a lot, and I've taken some good notes as well. I've got maybe 7 bullet points I might feed back to you, Deborah, that I got from it that might help. And man, it's actually kind of inspiring to see something like that come out of a community. So thanks for putting it together, and yeah,
Well,
talk to you soon.
Thank you for coming this evening, John. You added a lot to our meeting. We have an awesome committee. We have great participation, and the most important thing is we're developing our vision, because I think the vision is where we start, and then we can, as Jeff explained, you start with this concept and then you can build it out. So anybody else?
Could we just confirm a couple dates?
Sure.
You said, okay, 16th for this meeting, and then you said the 24th was BAC, or was that Locac?
Oh, Josh, what's the BAC meeting?
The BAC meeting is February 8th.
Oh, yeah, I have that one actually. Okay, so the 20
starts at 6.
Okay.
Okay, do we want to start at 6:30 or 6 o'clock?
6 would work better for me if that works for other people.
Okay, it's fine with me.
Fine.
Okay. I'm going to change our meeting to start at 6. That way we won't be quite as late as we were tonight. And I just appreciate everybody so much.
Josh, you don't have an agenda out yet, do you? I mean, you're only a couple of weeks away.
The agenda, let's see.
Well, it wasn't on the website at least.
Was it on the website?
No, and your meeting notes
you
from
might-
last time aren't
Yeah.
either.
So I'm sorry, remind me again, the 24th was Locac?
Yeah, the 24th.
Okay.
Tomorrow, next week,
And Josh,
Oh,
when is the-
January 24th.
January
Okay.
24th, next week.
That's why I was confused. Okay.
Yeah, next week.
and Josh,
No,
when is the BAC meeting again?
It's the 27th of January.
No, the BAC
Yes,
is
BAC.
February 8th, Tuesday.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, next Thursday for the Locac general meeting, Josh will be there, John will be there. We'll be talking about this project. I'll be bringing our recommendation to the committee. Bruce Gibson will be there, and so we'll make some things happen. All right,
Sounds good.
everybody.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
You're welcome.
And everybody, thanks for your input. See you, John. Bye, Josh.